I know that I can't be the only one who watches Marcus House, but I got to thinking the other day, who's the real Marcus House? Aside from being our go-to guy when it comes to SpaceX news every Saturday morning, who is Marcus House? Is he Hugh Laurie's long-lost cousin?
No, nothing like that.
Or does he build houses? Is he an engineer?
I just love space stuff. When it comes down to it, I just really love it. And I just love researching it and trying to get a good understanding of it.
In this exclusive sit-down, we'll answer those questions and a few more that some of you, my viewers, submitted ahead of this talk with Marcus House. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Marcus House, how you doing?
Hi, how are you, Ellie? Yeah, very good. How are you?
Good. We're still on Monday.
Yeah, yep, it's Tuesday for me. We're always leading the world.
Yeah. Now, remind me what part of Australia you were in.
I'm in Tasmania, actually, so we're right down the bottom, the little bottom island down the bottom right-hand side if you're looking at a map from above. So yeah, we can't really get too much further south without ending up in the in sort of the very cold parts of the world. So yeah, it's very cool down here through the winter, but really beautiful in summer because you've got the tilt and everything, and we sometimes we'll have days that go right through to about 9 p.m. before it gets dark. So yeah, it's pretty cool down here. It's I'm a long way away from where all the action takes place, sadly.
I was going to say, you're really far away from Boca Chica, Texas.
Yeah. I could get further away if I went to space. I think that's about the only way I could do it.
Have you been out there yet?
I haven't been to Boca Chica yet. I've been trying to get there for the last 2 years, but of course the pandemic has not helped. And, we're still technically locked down fully largely locked down from the rest of the world. So although we can travel interstate, it's still very difficult to get out of the country, to certain countries at least. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, we're all seeing these lockdowns start to relax and things. It's been incredibly hard for everybody and obviously caused a lot of frustration, but sure. We see the light. The light is at the end of the tunnel now, I think.
Right. Well, I mean, you're keeping people up to date from way far away, and you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolutely wild ride. I would have never, in my wildest dreams, would I have ever expected this to have been reality. It still blows my mind every week. We've got 300. I think most of my videos now are probably, if you to average them out, they're probably getting something like 350,000 views on average, which is crazy stuff. It's like a unfathomable amount of viewership. I think we've had something like 700 and 800 years of watch time or something like that. Some stupid number that's really kind of hard to comprehend. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I'm just hoping that we can keep that momentum, and especially as things have slowed just a little with Starship launches, obviously over the last few months, largely due to a lot of regulatory stuff, and because they're preparing the ground support systems and everything. But yeah, hopefully we're going to see a big ramp up fairly soon in that, assuming that we can see the FAA approvals will go through as they need to. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, so, I'm kind of curious, how did you start on this YouTube thing?
Oh, yeah, and that's kind of interesting because I was a Kerbal Space Program YouTuber to start with. So, we sort of built up a following of about 30,000 followers or something like that.
Hey, Marcus House with you here, ready to introduce you to Kerbal Space Program version 1.1.
Doing Kerbal Space Program missions, I never had a face behind it. It was just a voice and me playing this game for probably 2.5 years or 3 years or something like that. And then, it was obvious that the viewership of Kerbal Space Program was starting to decline. So what are we going to do with this channel? So we just started talking about real life rocket stuff. Heading all the way over to the build site, this week began with the stacking of Starship number 21. And all of a sudden, the views started to really skyrocket. So it's like, well, okay, we'll keep on this path. And over the course of a year or two, then we're getting sponsorships and this and that and whatever else to make to help make the show bigger and better. We've got editors now that actually do a lot of that work instead of me having to work 80 or 90 hours a week and all this sort of stuff that I was doing to start with, which frankly would have killed me by now if I had have kept doing that. So we have now got to the point where yeah, I've got a lot of help. I've got help in the scripting, help in the editing. I'm probably more doing a normal week of work now, which is fantastic, and we still get to turn around this great content. So, yeah, it's been a wild ride the last few years.
Yeah, when did you kind of pick up on Kerbal Space? Like, what year was that? And then when would you say it took off as Marcus House?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me just bring up my channel here so I'm not telling lies.
Your analytics. We love the analytics.
Few moments later.
It was roughly 2 years ago. I sort of started the transition by making SpaceX simulations with Kerbal Space Program. So we'd have all these Falcon 9s landing on drone ships and stuff. And this was all when Falcon Heavy was a huge deal, when that mission had really just kicked off. So we were doing all these simulations, trying to do the same thing, land 3 boosters all at once in this one mission and stuff. And we had a lot of success with that. It was a hell of a lot of work. Sadly, though, I don't have a drone ship out here to land on. But here is one of my favourite clips from the CRS-8 launch. You know, those videos did really well from a Kerbal Space Program point of view. So then we sort of started transitioning off into the real news. And so, yeah, it was basically, I would say, the one that really changed was probably... would have been about May of 2019. So, yeah, it's just been a bit over 2 years since we've really started diving into the SpaceX stuff. And, of course, other space news. But, you know, there's a big focus in SpaceX stuff. So we always got the first half of the video dedicated largely to SpaceX if there's enough to cover. And we've been doing that now almost religiously for pretty much 2 years. I don't think I've missed a Saturday video publish for almost 2 years. So, yeah, at some point I'm going to be sick or whatever, but I've managed to do it every week. At some point I'm going to end up with some issue some reason that I can't do it, but it hasn't happened yet. So that's we're very consistent. I pride myself on the consistency.
You're saying we, so who's we?
Yeah, so I've got a team behind me. I've got Brendan, Brenton, and Aeneas who help a lot with this scripting. We've got Adam and Tiago helping a lot with editing. They're actually based in the UK, so that way I can have done all the recording and put ads together and things like that, and then they can be editing through the night and things for me. So that's just fantastic. And, you know, huge thank you to my team, because there's no way that I could do it without them. And obviously, you know, that's all funded. Well, luckily we've got a nice strong Patreon following, a YouTube following with members as well. That helps fund the editors and what we do. So as well, I get a little bit of the odd bit of flack in the comments here and there saying, oh, you know, there's ads here, I don't like ads. It's like, well, you know, that's what pays for this to be done. It's like, we can't, you know, this isn't me donating my time and having my family not be able to buy food. You know, this is something that's a business.
When you first started, were you just solo making Kerbal Space videos?
Yep.
By yourself?
Yep. In fact, I did it by accident. The first video was by accident because we were trying to figure out at my other job, because I'm a web developer at my other job, we were trying to figure out, and one of our clients was like, oh, I want to put this video on YouTube. How do I do it? I'm like, well, I've got no idea. I've never used YouTube before. So I went home and, I'll just quickly screen record me playing this little thing and putting it up there. I didn't even mean to make it public. I was just trying to figure out how to use YouTube. And I sort of came back the next week and there was like, I don't know, 100 views on it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And there was a few comments saying, oh, I really quite enjoyed watching that. It's like, oh, maybe I'll make one properly then. So I made one properly, and it sort of kept on going. And, you know, 2 years or two and a half years later, I was still doing it, just all solo, one video every week. Didn't really make any money. It just didn't have the views to make any amount of revenue that was useful. It was only really when we transitioned over into SpaceX and stuff that we were starting to get into that hundreds of thousands of views kind of mark. And then that's when your sponsors will start approaching you and say, oh, look, you know, if you put an ad in, we'll give you this much or whatever. And then it's like, wow, I can actually make a business out of this. So yeah, it's been like I say, a wild ride. And the Patreons help more than anything, to be honest. Like, the sponsorships are great. That's a supplemental funding for it, but the Patreons are just so important. You know, all thanks really goes out to the patrons in the end, because we wouldn't have a channel without them. Not at least not to this degree where we've got people that are actually able to do some of the work. So yeah, that's an amazing thing.
I was going to say, so are you full-time, or you're almost full-time?
Yeah, I'd call it full-time. Technically, I do another day outside of this. that's more by choice to not be sitting in an office by myself all the time, because it's probably good to talk to people on the odd occasion instead of just sitting here editing like a crazy thing for a whole week or scripting. So it's nice to communicate and get out of the house. So I kind of try to keep doing that just for that reason more than anything. But from a funding point of view, you can absolutely be doing it full time, no problem. So yeah. And how about you? I mean, you've started doing some wonderful stuff down there. I've noticed that you've recently been to Starbase and stuff. So, what was? I mean, this is something that I wish I could have been with you because, again, I talk about this stuff every week. I've got this big following. I've never once been there, which is actually kind of embarrassing to say. So, yeah, what did you think about it when you were there?
Oh, it was incredible. I think about it. I mean, it's my wallpaper on my phone. I think about it every day, and I definitely intend to go back when they actually do, the launch. But yeah, you should get down there if you can, or get up there, I guess. No, it was. I knew that it was going to be like good for the channel, but I didn't realize how profound of an impact it would have on like me personally. So
yeah.
It was great. It was great. I met a lot of cool people, and it was different every day. Even just little things that we would notice that were different about, what work was being done. Even though when we were there, not a lot of activity was actually even going on. It was rumored that they might be doing the static testing. That was clearly way off on the timeline. But, we did see, things were changing even still. So it was really cool.
Yeah,
I did not get to meet Elon, but I got to eat at their private SpaceX restaurant.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool. I had an employee invite me as his +1, so I was like, yeah, I've had the fancy SpaceX food. I eat where Elon eats. I just didn't get to meet him that night, but
yeah. Look, it would be just a fantastic experience to be anywhere at those facilities. And like we were talking the other day about the pressure test, which I'm sort of assuming is about Raptor 2 when he's talking about that they got this Raptor up to 321 bar before it sort of exploded. I'm like, that would be a great name for the bar up on top of the high bay, the 321 bar, 321 bar.
Oh yeah, I love
that. Yeah, it's really cool.
You should tweet him.
Yeah, although I did stick that on Twitter the other day, so I got a few likes. But it's one of those things. There's so many great names that people come up with on Twitter, so it's hard to compete against those. But
I definitely. I feel like there's a massive following for this stuff too, and for my channel in particular. I mean, I'm nowhere near what you are. I'd like to be someday, but I had 200 subscribers in February, and now I have over 22,000. So that's less than a year growth. I'd say that's pretty good.
That's actually phenomenal growth. So, to give you an idea, it took me 3 years to get to 30,000 subscribers. 3 years. So, and that was all Kerbal Space Program stuff. The SpaceX following has just been huge in terms of growth. But, the thing I like most about seeing people like yourself down there on Starbase and recording and capturing this stuff is that the number of females that you sort of see that are actually kind of producing content is very, very small, and I'd love to see that change. In fact, last time I looked, I think 2% of my subscriber base is female,
same.
which is like, wow, how is that possible? How is that possible? So I don't know if there's a skew in the numbers, or whether to be classed, to be recognised as a female viewer, you have to have entered something into a default profile or something, or maybe males get assumed to be male. I don't know what it is, but it's hard for me to believe that only 2% of the audience could be female. Anyway, so it's great to see people like yourself that are hopefully going to encourage more of that viewership. I love the stuff that Cosmic Perspective are doing with Mary Liz and Ryan and all these people down there that are just bringing that to life and actually making it. It's like, there's actually a lot of women down there at Starbase working and doing wonderful things. Like we should be seeing much more viewership. So it's interesting that, and we just want to see the entire story be shared, and it's incredibly exciting. And even in Australia, especially where I am in Tasmania, nobody knows about this stuff. Nobody. In fact, I can. If I was walking around Texas, I'd have people stop me, sort of saying, "Hey, it's Marcus. Hey, how you going, Marcus?" Whereas here, it would be very unusual for anyone to ever recognise me down here. So
really?
It's like nobody knows about SpaceX or what's going on. I feel like I'm like this 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 thorn in the middle of the state that's just got no real relationship with anybody around him, because nobody here is talking about it. In fact, Australia, out of the whole world, probably has got one of the less useful space programs. We're just starting to ramp that up. As I actually want to start talking about some of the things we're doing in Australia with Gilmore Space and some of these launch providers that are just starting to develop their rockets. So we're so far behind in the country from the rest of the world. It's like, well, we've got a long way to catch up. So yeah.
So I do have some viewer questions, but I did have a couple of my own questions. What is your background? Like, what did you study, and what career have you had before this?
Yeah, so like I said before, I'm a web developer as my main role, my main job. I've got no formal training in rocketry. I loved science and computers and technology when I was a kid, and loved watching the shuttles and everything when I was growing up through my teens. Other than that, I just love space stuff. When it comes down to it, I just really love it, and I just love researching it and trying to get a good understanding of it. But I guess quite similar to Tim Dodd's story, who is not really formally trained anyway, but just really loves it, really wants to learn it and understand it and bring it to people that probably don't have any previous knowledge of this stuff, and to sort of say, although we may not be rocket scientists ourselves, we can certainly appreciate the story and talk about it with hopefully a fair amount of accuracy. We don't get much stuff wrong. We're always trying to predict what SpaceX are actually doing, what this thing here that just showed up last week might be for. Could it be for this? Could it be for that? Still trying to figure out the large methane tanks that arrived last week. It's like, are they for for rapid detanking? Is that what they're there for? Are they for recondensing? It's like very hard to say until we get a bit more information. But we can always guess and have fun knowing that we actually probably don't know in detail. But that's part of the fun, the guesswork, and the audience like the guesswork as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And I've actually interviewed Scott Manley a couple times, and it's funny because he also started with Kerbal Space, and he has an accent like you do that people probably love as well on your end. So are you friends with him?
We've done a couple of... we did a Kerbal Space Program collaborative thing years ago. I haven't had anything much direct with Scott as of late, but we're all busy and do our own things. But we've done a few little things in the past. But it's really... I've got to say, out of anybody on YouTube, I would say Scott Manley and probably Shadow Zone, who was another Kerbal Space Program YouTuber that was there for a long time, still does stuff now. Those two, I think, really inspired, because I was following them before I started creating Kerbal Space Program content myself. So I suspect that if it wasn't for those two individuals, I wouldn't have a channel at all. So thank you, Scott and Shadow Zone, if you're out there happening to be watching, because I don't think any of this would have happened without me being a fan of your channels before I even put something on YouTube. So it's funny how things work out, how this little tiny thing can actually be life-changing, like this has been. So it's amazing.
Yeah, walk me through briefly what a day looks like, in the life of a full-time content creator like yourself.
Oh, wow. So I usually do my other role on a Monday. So Tuesday, it all sort of kicks off today. So we start looking at, okay, what's happened since the video went up, since Saturday. Starting to compile all the scripting together, looking at other missions that are going on. So, this week we've obviously got a potential launch with Astra and things like that. So we're sort of planning out, okay, what's our video potentially going to be filled with this week? And then obviously we can assign things to various people, some of the incredibly great people working with me to write a segment, and I will write segments and try to put it all together in something that seems cohesive, because sometimes it can get a bit detached from each other, so you're trying to make it all sounding quite related to each other, organising sponsor placements for the week and who's funding this one versus that, and then that all goes through until about Thursday morning for me, to when I sit down behind the camera, record it all out. We've got a script there in front of us. We record it all out using this camera that we're using right now, and yes, it then gets quickly sliced up into a big heap of A-roll. Sponsor placement goes in, gets sent off to the editors. The editors are going flat out from basically Thursday until Saturday morning my time, and then and then it all goes up Saturday night for me, which is Saturday morning for the US. And it's important that it's in the right released in the right time zone, because about 48% of the audience is from the US. So that alone, and then there's like 25% or something from the UK, and the rest all scattered around the world. In fact, when I was saying before that nobody in Tasmania would know who I am, it's quite literally true, because only 4% of the entire audience is Australian. That's the entire country, 4%. So it goes to show how, yeah, that's crazy. So nobody in Australia knows who I am. Well, a few people, apart from the people that have followed me, and some of my wonderful patrons, supporters are the Australians. Like, oh, it's so nice to see an Australian actually talking about all this stuff, because you don't see it much. So even though this is where I am, this is not where my audience is. My audience is over there with you. So yeah, it's an extraordinary thing, thinking that I'm almost a world away, and that's where all the fan base is, all the subscriber base is. So
they come to you for the information about what's going on here.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's really strange to think about it that way, but yeah, that's very true.
What? When was the last time you were in the States?
I've actually only been there twice, and I've never been to Texas. I've never been to Florida even. So I was in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And this actually goes back quite a way. So I've been to New Zealand to check out Rocket Lab stuff. That was actually even before the previous 2 years. Obviously, we've been locked into a pandemic for most of the time that the channel has been successful. So I kind of, again, feel like a bit of a fish out of water sometimes. But the only rocket launch I've really seen is a Rocket Lab one. So
Wow.
crazy.
Well, I still haven't seen a rocket launch, so I get that. I get that. We'll
It'll be an extraordinary thing.
Yes. So I want to get to some of these questions so that one guy says, ask him to prove Australia is real.
Oh, that's my favourite conspiracy theory, that one, that we're all paid actors here on this side of the world, because the world's flat, you see. There's no Australia, it doesn't exist. It's like, it would be interesting, like, you would have to, as a government or some sort of body that could make this happen, it would be an extraordinary thing to have a conspiracy that could be held that tightly. I would say every Australian that's ever existed is an actor. So yes, that's interesting.
But you guys all have a killer accent.
Oh, thank you.
That we Americans love. We love the Australian accent.
Yeah. Oh,
do you
that's
get that
great.
all the time?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's and maybe that's part of why the channel's been successful, because it is just a little bit out of the ordinary. It's hopefully an accent that people can follow. People do quite often say that I talk too fast, and I remember when I was in America so long ago that people say that again. Like, you kind of tie all your words together there, Marcus. Just say that slower. So I do get the odd comment saying, "Oh, you talk too fast." It's like, well, actually, down here that's normal. But
wow.
Yeah.
Do we sound weird to you?
No.
Australians?
No.
Do Australians
Because
like American?
Oh
accents?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we watch so much American TV, so for us, it's just normal. In fact, sometimes when we hear an Australian on the TV, that sounds weird because it's like we're so used to watching American TV that it's it's weird.
What else? Just a quick aside. What else do Australians think about America?
Oh, we just love it. I mean, we certainly. I certainly don't dive into much to political stuff because we're kind of quite similar in that regard. But we certainly don't have a lot of the same freedoms with gun control and things, which, of course, a lot of us think is a good thing. Americans would probably say the opposite. But there's definitely cultural similarities all over the place. And in the end, we've all kind of come, or many of us have come from the same place. We've sort of largely migrated from the UK and stuff. My family's all originally from the UK that was shipped here. Tasmania, in particular, used to be a prison state. That's where they would send you if you were the worst of the worst. They would ship you from the UK on a boat, probably with a good likelihood of death on the way, because it wasn't fun travelling on a boat several hundred years ago. And you would end up in Tasmania if you were the worst of the worst. So we actually was a prison colony for a little while until we obviously got past all that. So yeah, and, obviously similar stories and stuff with how America was settled and all that sort of stuff. But all of our roots are kind of in the same place to a degree.
Right. Someone asks, have you seen a Tasmanian devil, and do they spin?
They do spin. And yes, they're you can go to any wildlife park or zoo here, and there'll be Tasmanian devils there. There's been a horrible facial tumour disease that they've been getting the last couple of decades, so it's been a bit of a battle to keep them healthy out in the wild because they've got this disease that that sort of affects them. So it seems to be under control now, I think. But yeah, you can go to a wildlife park here in Tasmania and see them everywhere. In fact, you can see them in probably any Australian zoo, but they're from Tasmania. So and the cartoon character is it's a little bit exaggerated. They don't obviously walk on two legs like that, but they're little they're cute little things, but they are also extremely vicious little things too. You don't put your hands anywhere near them, put it that way. They're all sort of enclosed away, and you sort of watch them through a window or over a fence or something, because they can be pretty nasty. Yeah, they're sort of they're not huge. They're just sort of this sort of large.
Oh my
but yeah,
God.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Someone also asks if you're an engineer.
I'm not an engineer. No. I love engineering. Like I love researching it and trying to understand it. And but no, I'm not an engineer. I'd love to actually do an engineering course at some point because it is fascinating. I think if I was to have done anything else with my career, it would have either been in science or engineering or something like that. But yeah, that's not the path I ended up on. But yeah.
Yeah. Someone also says Marcus House is a legend. Let's go. That's not a question. I just wanted to read that to you.
Thank you.
When will he go to Boca Chica and see for himself what's going on there?
Yeah, well, I'd really like to have done it already. We had plans to go this year, but then obviously things happened over the last 2 years. But look, I would really hope next year that we can actually start doing this, doing a few trips there. For me, it's like a huge journey because we've got to fly for basically 24 hours or something just to get to the US. And we've got to, I can't remember where we had a stopover. Maybe we had a stopover in Hawaii or something. I'm trying to think back when we last took the trip, but it's like a significant journey with significant cost actually. So, it's not something that we can do all the time, but if we get the chance to go and see like a full stack launch in Boca Chica, it's like, we've got to go see this. This is going to be the biggest thing ever launched ever.
I was going to say,
that's going to be crazy.
You're going to save it for that. I mean, but then, there's like a window, like they don't, they're not always on that exact date.
Yeah. And look, this is a hard thing because it's such a big journey. You've almost got to be like, okay, well, we can't do videos for a few weeks while I do this trip, which is a little we'd have to just do a few little live streaming clips or something like that, which would be a little bit different. But we're really looking forward to doing it, and hopefully get to take a few other people from Australia as well who some of the patrons and stuff that help support me are big fans of what we do, so maybe a few of us all come over together or something like that. But hopefully that'll start to unlock next year. I mean, we're looking at sort of opening the country back up fairly soon now, I think. So it's kind of been interesting. I know there's a lot of opinions out there that Australia, you've been like fully locked down stuff. Where I am, we've been super lucky, and it is true that 2 states of Australia have been really battling this thing. It's been really sucky for the people there. Whether the political decisions about full lockdowns or not was the right thing, I don't know. But one thing I will say is that they've stopped it spreading to the entire country. Most of the country has actually been pretty much COVID-free. Tasmania, in particular, we haven't had any COVID down here since like the middle of last year. So we've all been able to move around without masks, without this, and do life as normal. Yeah, we've been kind of locked into the state and locked into the country, but oh man, compared to what you guys have had to go through in certain situations, it's been easy down here, with the exception of New South Wales and Victoria, who have really kind of suffered through this. And my heart goes out to everybody in there, and I know how hard it's been, and they're just starting to unlock things now. So, it's been such a bizarre ride the last few years. But anyway, it's looking like the lights at the end there now. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about the rumors that, Elon would like to have a launch next month? Do you think
Um,
there's
yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening. I think that the Starship could be ready to go next month, but I can't see the FAA process being done several weeks from now. I mean, November's next week, so
yeah.
I don't really see that happening. I could be, I might be wrong. It might be that the FAA just tomorrow come out and say, "Yep, no, it's all good, off you go." In which case, fantastic, maybe we will. But I'll be surprised if we see anything happen by December. Personally, hopefully I'm wrong about that. Hopefully, Elon knows something that I don't about the FAA approval process and stuff. But they've really only just had the public comments late last week.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming all that's going to now be taken into account, and there'll be assessments and documents written and this, that, and whatever else, and it's probably going to at least be another month, I would have thought. But I could be wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. So,
if you are wrong, you'd probably have to plan your trip pretty quickly.
yeah. Oh, that's right. I mean, if it probably won't be the first full stack launch that I'll be able to see, but it might be like the second or third. I know they're planning on filming the re-entry process with the heat shield on the Starship in March. NASA's planning on doing that, so the assumption would be maybe we could get over there in March for whatever that launch is going to be. We know that Boca Chica's got, at least at this point, hopefully, if the approval goes through, permission to launch 5 times next year with a full stack. And a lot of people are getting pretty upset. It's like, they're never going to be able to meet the demands that they want if they can only launch 5 times. Like, that's just what the current plan is. That doesn't mean that the FAA can't extend that after they've done the assessment. So I think everyone's probably panicking a little bit early about the 5 launching. It's good to announce it. This is what the document says. It says 5 launches. That's going to be weird. What does this mean? Talking about it. But I think in reality, the launches may actually be increased as soon as they can do the assessments. Okay, well, we've had 1 launch. This was the impact of it. Wasn't as bad as we thought it might be. Let's open it up more. So I think they're just probably treading with caution at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone also asks about the future of Starlink.
Yeah, I follow Starlink really quite closely because it was actually one of my first videos that really kind of took off when I started in this transition to space news. And yeah, actually, I noticed from your channel you had a lot on there about Starlink. It's and yeah. You'll have a launch every week of Starlink, and then all of a sudden there's nothing for like a month or two. Like we've seen just recently, they've only just done their first dedicated polar launch anyway.
Yes.
I'm surprised actually that we haven't seen a couple more already, but maybe they're just tweaking a few things before they send up more, because they're the ones with the laser links, those last lot. So I'm thinking maybe they're still a couple of weeks away from the next Starlink maybe. But yeah, no, I love following that. It's quite an extraordinary thing. The main argument from people on Starlink is, well, there's a lot of potential for space debris there, to which I can't really argue much there. There is actually that potential, but space is big, so you can have lots of stuff there before it becomes a real issue. The question is, where's that threshold? And if you start having some sort of cascade, how bad could it be? So, SpaceX have always said that they've got automatic systems that automatically navigate away from hazards and things that they're aware of. It's the things that they're aware of, though. Like, you only need one little unknown nut or something like that flying around at, several thousand kilometres several kilometres an hour in relation to the speed of the satellite, and it can be disabled, and then parts of it break off, and then all of a sudden you lose control of a bunch of them. So it's going to be interesting to sort of see what the real impact is. I mean, this is all very well policed anyway. Like it's been cleared by the FAA. They do all these numbers. They're the experts. I'm not the expert. Like, people are always like, this is going to be a disaster, or whatever the fear, the fear story might be. It's like, all these people are saying that without any knowledge. The people that have the knowledge are the people that are allowing them to launch. So, they're not the only network that want to do this. Obviously, you've got OneWeb and you've got Amazon and, yeah.
Well, Amazon allegedly, but when?
When? Yeah, well, actually, I noticed. I haven't actually looked at it in detail yet, but I did notice there was a video on Blue Origin's YouTube channel this morning for me about this space station they're going to build in partnership with Boeing and this company, that company. It's like, interesting. I would just love them to launch something into orbit first before they start telling us all these things they're going to put up there. Actually, get a rocket up there first.
Yeah.
Which would be great.
That's like, prove Australia is real, prove that concepts are real, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, it's kind of stupid. I mean, those sorts of conspiracy theories about Australia not being real, they're the ones that are just the most bizarre. Because, I mean, anyone can just jump on an aircraft and fly to Australia. It's like, what, there's no conspiracy there. Go and jump on it. It's like people that say, oh, this is all fake when they're watching Starship. It's like, you realise you can just go to Boca Chica and open your eyeballs, right? So there's nothing fake about it.
Well, I think also they mean fake as though, like, nothing's going to be done with it. Like, it'll be squashed before, I don't know. People are always going to hate. Someone ask him about the Australian space development. So, you kind of mentioned that quickly, but why has the ball been so slow rolling, and what's going on now?
Without being too political about it, we've just never funded it. The Australian government has not funded any space organisation stuff to a reasonable degree for really ever. And we've done some pretty amazing stuff in the past alongside with the Apollo program, where we've had great satellite. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie The Dish, which is about the Australian involvement in the Apollo program and things like things like that, where we were able to, because we do have a great satellite array here. We're one of the main comm stations around the world, so to communicate with even things like Voyager and things like this. So we're involved, but we don't have dedicated launch facilities that send up anything big. We've never had a Saturn V or anything really even remotely large. We've sent up rockets from Australia, but they're more satellite, more small satellites and stuff. But even that stopped a long time ago. So we're just getting to the point now where we've got private company involvement, and Gilmore Space, who's the one I'm sort of looking at the closest at the moment, developing a rocket now that sort of seems to be a similar sort of business kind of model to Rocket Lab or something like that. Probably not quite so big a rocket as Rocket Lab. I forget the size of it, but they're looking at launching this in 2022. So maybe at some point we'll actually say, hey, something launched from Australia, or something reasonably significant launched from Australia. Because, I mean, we've had sounding rockets and all this sort of stuff that happens every now and again, but, they're typically just ordered from another part of the world, and a little payload popped on them and up you launch them, and they're not really very significant in the grand scheme of things. But when we're talking about Australian government budgets for the space agency down here, we're talking in the order of millions, not billions, millions.
Right.
It might be, we're going to allocate $50 million to the space agency in this year. It's like, that doesn't even launch one Falcon 9. It's like, so yeah, we're hoping to see funding increase and becoming a bigger part of it. So,
yeah. Someone asks if an Arecibo-style radio telescope is being constructed in the Australian outback or a solar energy farm.
We have a lot of solar projects going on. I don't know about any of them in detail. One of the biggest battery systems in the world is a Tesla battery system that they're using down here. That's almost been a test case for how well that can help support a grid install. So, we're doing things like that and reasonably significant things. I haven't heard about a telescope system. That doesn't mean there isn't one. It might be that I need a link to go and read some stuff, because it's a bit poor if I don't know about that. But I was very sad to see about the Arecibo telescope was it last year or the year before? Last year that it all collapsed, wasn't it? Start of last year. So I mean, that's those things are irreplaceable, and to have them just stop maintenance on it because it was a bit expensive or a bit too expensive. Obviously governments have to fund this stuff, but it's so sad. It almost could have been like a multi-government around the world support to help keep this thing, because it was very useful, obviously, for for the entire world, not just where it was located or the government that happened to have the land that it sat on. It was useful for the entire world, and it's very sad to see that go. It'd be great to see if it would be great to see if Australia's doing something in that regard in the future. I've heard of a few projects. I thought some were around Asia somewhere, but yeah, I'm just going off the top of my head now, so I'm not sure.
What is your opinion regarding NASA's ongoing business relationship with SpaceX? Do you foresee a time where NASA will leave SpaceX out of future contracts and considerations based on political pressure?
Yeah, look, I don't really get into the politics too much, but I mean, there's no doubt that without NASA, SpaceX wouldn't be there. So, NASA has supported SpaceX all the way through, and we see it with Crew Dragon launches. We've got a Crew 3 going up this weekend, from memory, Saturday or Sunday, unless it's been delayed. These things are significant, and when you compare it to the more government-structured budgets out there, such as Starliner, they haven't even come close to competing with this new regime of commercial companies like SpaceX being able to take the reins here. And I honestly can't see that that's going to reverse, because why would it? They're able to launch things much cheaper, much more cost effectively. They can then spend the money on things like James Webb space telescopes, and not just the US but the world can spend all this budget that they would have had before just to launch things to more wonderful rovers and missions and habitats and space stations. This is what governments should be focusing their funding on, and let the commercial space launch costs drop, because they've been insane for so long. And I want to see the Space Launch System launch. Everybody gets a little negative towards the Space Launch System. You've got to remember as well, though, that the start of that process was started well before SpaceX even had a Falcon 9 there. So it's very hard to kind of stop dead and say, okay, well, we won't do it anymore. Governments don't like to see that they've wasted all this money. So, and to a degree, we haven't seen Starship launch yet. There's no guarantee that the full stack Starship will be a successful thing. We all obviously wish for it to be and hope for it to be, and we don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. But there's still a way to go there. So, Space Launch System being another alternative to get big masses into space is still handy right now. Maybe in a couple of years it won't be. We'll have to see on that.
Someone wants me to ask you about the plan on recovering the Starship when it lands in the water of Hawaii.
I don't. We haven't really heard anything. As far as we know, they're just going to probably have. I imagine that they would have drones and aircraft nearby to film the whole thing, watch it, try to analyze it as much as possible. But it's essentially just going to touch down gently in the ocean, hopefully, and topple over. And it's not going to hold up like a big booster like the full stack Super Heavy. That's not. I can't imagine that's going to keep intact. That's going to break in half, surely. I'll be surprised if it doesn't. So I don't think there's really any capability to retrieve it unless they're going to start trying to pull it out of the bottom of the ocean. So my thought is that they'll just let it sit there. There's a few people who are like, oh, well, wouldn't they have to at least go and retrieve the engines and things so people can't go and dig them up and reverse engineer them? And it's like, well, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. All I know is that they plan to splash them down, and that's really all we know.
What is your opinion on NASA considering dropping Starliner to the curb? Should NASA give Dream Chaser its chance to be the new partner with SpaceX's Dragon capsule for its crew and supply missions to ISS?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Dream Chaser. I think it's great. So I'd love to see that have the option. Whether Starliner's at that point, I don't know. It's interesting you say that, because just earlier today we see Starliner proposed for this new space station that's going to be all in cooperation with Blue Origin and this and that. It's like, well, they don't seem to be dead in the water, but it has been extremely problematic. There was a time when we all thought that Starliner was going to beat Crew Dragon to the station, and it seemed like a very tight race, and all of a sudden Starliner didn't make it through that past test, and it's been on hold since then. So, and obviously now still having trouble. So, are they are they close to fixing that, or have they got to go through a redevelopment process with the propulsion system or whatever it is that they need to do? I think if they do have to go through a redevelopment process, they may well say, look, we're going to give Starliner another chance. Boeing still has funding options with other companies like Blue Origin, maybe for more commercial things. Doesn't mean that it's dead, but if NASA drops it, it'll be a big pain point for them, I'm sure.
Michael asks, do you plan on encouraging your child to be an advocate to humanity becoming a multiplanetary species and become interested in math, science, and space exploration?
Well, my eldest son is already very interested in science and physics and chemistry and all these sorts of things, so I can see that he would probably really love this. My other youngest son, who's only 9, so he's still finding what his interests are, but he's quite interested in math. Math is his favourite thing, so who knows? I certainly won't be pressuring them to follow any path. We all make our own way. And it's kind of bizarre that I've made my way into the path that I'm on. Sometimes you fall into things and don't expect that this will be the life you've ended up with. So, I'm incredibly fortunate in that regard. Really, we want to support the kids with whatever they want to do. But, they're certainly big fans of what we talk about. Like, we watched the Falcon Heavy launch together. We watch a lot of other launches together. We've seen a lot of the Starship stuff together. So, unfortunately, the time zones always work out to be that it's extremely early in the morning when something interesting is going on, so they're not usually watching it live like I'm trying to do. Some of the live streams that we were doing back with the Starship prototypes landing attempts, they were like all through my night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning and stuff like this. So, yeah.
And just, what do you like to do aside from YouTube? What does Marcus House like to do in his spare time when he's not making videos?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I quite like, well, when we come out of winter, because winter's kind of like hibernation mode where we'll just stay inside most of the time, play a few computer games and things like that. But, in summer we try to get out. I mean, YouTube absorbs so much of my life that I don't have a huge amount of free time, but, just love getting out and going to places, just visiting places, really. We go on our odd holidays, which have all been state-based, really trying to go to holidays outside the state soon, hopefully. Nothing specific, but just, just love checking things out, going for walking and things like that, yeah.
Yeah, Robert Smith says, please let him know this household ranging in ages 80s, 70s, 50s, 30s, 20s. All look forward to Saturday morning Marcus House updates. Maybe he could add an Ellie segment to his show. That's a nice suggestion, Robert Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's amazing actually looking at the range. Like when you look at the stats, you can see the range of age groups, and certainly everything from like your mid-20s up to 80, 90 is where everybody's watching from. It's like it covers a huge age gap. And interestingly, not so much the younger, up until, but that might be just skewed data because you can't have a YouTube profile until you're 15 or whatever it is, I can't remember, but so there'd be skewed data there, I'm sure. But I certainly want to make sure that all the young people that are just coming out of school are getting incredibly interested in this stuff as well.
Awesome.
In fact, I will say, I will just quickly call out Brendan Lewis, who works with me on the scripting and stuff, and he does a lot of the Starship diagrams. You see me sharing them all the time. Terrific person. It's one of my favourite people, and he's leaving high school this year. That's how young Brendan is. He's just doing his final year of high school this year. So these are the people in the future that are going to be doing amazing things. We want to see as many of those people coming out of school with that passion for this stuff that we can.
Oh yeah, and how cool that you can kind of give him a launching pad.
Yeah.
Help that journey.
Yeah, oh, it's been a really fun time, and don't get me wrong. I mean, he's done so much for me as well with the work that he does for me, and we in return I share a few of his tweets and stuff, and promote what he does, which is the least I can do. But yeah, he it's been a fun ride for him as well. Going from a small following on Twitter to quite a significant following now. He's got I don't know, close to 40,000 followers or something like that. So, and has the ability to do this sort of work in his part-time stuff around schooling. He can help me write content, so it's hopefully a fairly significant opportunity for him as well to be able to get into this.
No, it's gotta be. Well, Marcus, it has been so great to talk to you. Thank you so much for being willing to try and coordinate time zones, even though it was still a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I kind of screwed that up a little.
I mean, you know what? It's hard. You're very far away.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great talking to you. Yeah.
Yes, I have so many of my viewers that are obsessed with you, so they're gonna love hearing all of this, and we really appreciate you giving us some of your valuable time.
No worries at all.
No,
it's a pleasure. I've seen a few of your videos before, and I just hadn't had the opportunity to actually meet you. So it's always great to meet new people. So thanks for getting in touch.
Well, I have a feeling when you go to Texas, I might be there too, so we can actually meet in person.
Yeah, no, that would be great. No, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I can tell you that I learned a lot more about Australia, specifically Tasmania, after talking to Marcus. So it's always fun to talk to people around the globe, and it's really cool that we have a platform like YouTube that allows us to make those connections and meet people that we would have otherwise probably never talked to. Again, if you guys look forward to this content and enjoy what's happening here on my channel, Ellie in Space, of course, all of your support is always appreciated, whether you like the videos, subscribe, maybe share them. And to my Patreons, I especially appreciate your special support. So if you are interested in supporting Ellie in Space, make sure to check the link in the description here to see how you can do that. I can't wait to share more interesting interviews with you guys in the future, and of course, more SpaceX and Starlink related news. Until then, we'll see you very soon.